All right, you guys, welcome. Welcome to another meeting with you guys. I appreciate you guys very much. I appreciate you guys for coming out and checking out what we're doing here, the things that we're showing people. So very grateful for that. I wanted to kind of just, well, give you guys an idea of what we're going to be doing here. Today, we're going to be doing a discussion. We're going to be talking about the occupancy of military occupancy, belligerent occupancy. So, guys got to buckle up. This is going to be a good program. So, basically, it's understanding the types of military occupation. And we're going on an in-depth exploration of a crucial complex topic within the international law and the various types of military occupation. Okay. Believe it or not, you guys don't realize it, but we are under a military occupation now. So that's what part of what the problem is, that people don't understand what is happening and why things are crazy like they are. So I hate to be coming in at the last minute at the end of when everything's crazy, but I guess it's a good time to start solving problems. So anyway, this is all just for informational purposes, and this is for Tito.
The following program contains mature content and is the truth. No part herein is intended to be legal advice and is for entertainment purposes only. Audience discretion is advised.
All right, you guys. So in this video, we're going to delve into the first half of Chapter 1, focusing on different types of military occupations and their legal frameworks, the historical context, and the rights of private civilians under these occupations. Okay, let's begin this journey into understanding the multifaceted nature of military occupation and its impact on civilian life. Today, I didn't tell you guys, but what I'm going to do, instead of giving these hours, because it's harder for me, it takes me usually sometimes an hour to 2 hours more to create a program than it does to create a half-hour one. And this information is a lot, so I think I'm going to break it down into 2 parts, and then I can expand more on it if necessary. So, what is the definition of military government? To comprehend types of military occupation, we have to find what constitutes military government. And military government refers to the authority exercised by armed force over the lands and property, its inhabitants of enemy territory, allied territory, even domestic territory from enemy occupation or rebellion. Okay? This form of governance emerges when an armed force substitutes its authority for that of the previous sovereign or governmental entity. Okay? So it steps into the shoes of somebody who has otherwise, waived a right. That's exactly what it says. So this form of governance emerges when an armed force substitutes its authority for that of the previous sovereign. So a sovereign must waive a authority before a armed force can come in and take authority over it. Okay. Some of the key characteristics: the military supersedes the former sovereign or governmental authority, establishing the control over the territory. Okay. Remember, there's 2 different types of jurisdictions. There is a territorial jurisdiction. So the scope of military government includes administration, law enforcement, civil affairs, and ensuring order and stability in the occupied region, the military occupied region. So the other characteristic is duration. And this governance is temporary, lasting only until a stable civilian government can be established or restored. Okay? So it's only supposed to be a temporary thing that's turned into a permanent thing. You guys see that? So that's from 1933. It's been a perpetual emergency under executive order. So military government does not entail a transfer of sovereignty, but rather it imposes control by the occupying force, constrained by international law and customs. The ultimate responsibility for military government, it lies with the theater command, who may delegate authority to subordinate commanders as necessary. So the commander-in-chief would give orders to subordinate people under that. While military governments assume broad authority, they are bound by international laws designed to protect the rights of private civilians. Under military occupation, civilians retain their fundamental rights, though the extent to which these rights are upheld can vary based on occupying forces' adherence to international standards. Okay, you guys, I hope you understand what that means. It just, the rights can vary based upon, well, when I say the occupying force, and let's clarify this. So we were originally out of the womb, we were private. And by shuffling of legal paperwork, we became part of public. And becoming part of public puts you into a military occupied area just by default. Even though you can be sitting saying, I'm private right here, and nobody's bothering you, it's still because of the way that you have not clarified records, it still remains that you are in a military occupied area and that you are not, that you're agreeing that you are a belligerent, like an enemy of the state. Okay, and that is an erroneous classification for me anyways. Some of you, it may be an erroneous classification as well. I'm not telling anybody you need to get on board. This is just information that I'm providing to you. But for me, it was improper. It was out of the proper the standing that I had, and it didn't have the right status. So I knew that it was my job to go and create something that would fix that. And so that's what we're talking about here. One of the problems that I needed to have fixed. So personal safety, civilians must be protected from violence, threats, and acts of reprisal. That does not have anything to do with U.S. citizens. That is not citizens, okay? U.S. citizens don't have that. Civilians have the right to property protection of their private property, which cannot be confiscated by the occupying forces without due process. See, but if you're a U.S. belligerent, that can be classified as, we just skip over the due process. There is no due process because it's military. You guys understand that? So that's what I'm saying. When I realized that I wasn't, like, I'm being put in the wrong category, and it's just something I got to fix because I did it. The balance between military control and civilian right, it is delicate, and it requires a strict adherence to international humanitarian laws. And these prevent abuses and ensure that, well, the humane treatment of local populations. Okay? So the regulations mandate that occupying powers must respect the laws in force in the country unless absolutely prevented by military necessity. Protection of property is the regulations strictly prohibit the confiscation of private property, underscoring the importance of respecting civilian possessions. So occupying forces are required to ensure public order and safety, maintaining stability, and preventing chaos in the occupied territory. And the applications of these regulations are essential for maintaining and minimizing legitimacy, legitimacy and minimizing the harm to civilians during occupations. And we are currently in an occupation. The Hague regulation are grounded in customary international law. You guys, many of you have heard of the Hague Convention, and, you know, people are telling you, go get a non-Hague or whatever. You know, I think you know what I'm talking about, which has evolved to ensure that even during conflict, certain standards of humanity and justice are upheld. So the principles are particularly crucial in maintaining order and protecting the rights and properties of civilians in occupied territories. The Hague regulations are designed to protect the rights and well-being of private civilians during military occupations by mandating respect for existing laws and prohibiting the confiscation of private property. These regulations aim to minimize the disruption to civilian life and maintain a semblance of normalcy. So if you have a corporation that you are considered a member of and you haven't repudiated anything and they are a member of the Hague Convention, then you haven't gotten out of anything. That's why they ask you to, you know, people tell you go get a non-Hague country. The regulations provide a legal framework that civilians can appeal in the event of abuses or unlawful actions by the occupying forces. So we have rights. Ensuring the safety and dignity of civilians is a core tenet, preventing acts of violence, exploitation, and arbitrary detention. So, again, we don't know who we are. We end up going in military occupation, and that's where we get in trouble. The enforcement of these regulations is critical to preserving the integrity of civilian rights and maintaining international legal standards during periods of military occupation. One of the complex scenarios addressed in Chapter 1 here is the occupation of neutral territory during wartime. The situation involves significant legal and ethical considerations, as the sovereignty and neutrality of the affected states must be respected. And self-defense in certain cases, occupying neutral territory is justified by extremely necessity and self-defense. So self-sustenance, particularly if the neutral territory is being used by an enemy to launch attacks or support military operations. Okay, you guys are going, well, what are you talking about? This, like, it sounds like we're at war where we live, and that's really kind of what it is. It's kind of like what's happened is not a war, but a wartime, as in we are going to pretend as if things are an emergency to the extent that we are borderline at war, but we're not quite at war. It's like kind of like a limbo of BS, if I could create an acronym. So what we're talking about doing is creating we've created a record where we have become a classification of an enemy of the state. And here's the thing: all of the people that are that are residents of states have estates. Okay, and if you're an alien or you are an enemy, then you don't get to use that estate the same way. Okay, so it becomes public, and they want it public because they can do more things with it. They don't get to delegate specific stuff. So you guys realize that if you have the money, right? If you're holding the money in your hand and you give it to somebody, you can tell people what to do based upon what their job is. You go to a car wash and you give people money and they will wash your car. You go to a dog wash and you give people money and your dog and they will wash your dog. You go to a dog wash and you give people your husband and they'll probably wash your husband too. But however they do it, we're going to get like something for exchange for something, right? And the bottom line is that we're providing an exchange for the value, and we don't even realize that under the circumstances that what we're doing, how we're doing it. Like, we're buying stuff, and every time we buy it, we re-announce that we are enemies. But you're not creating a notice and putting it out there like that. The same thing that can be done can be undone, and that's what you guys have to learn so that you can protect yourselves and your loved ones. So one of the complex scenarios, again, was we're talking about self-defense. In the Russo-Japanese War, Japan's occupation of Manchuria was justified on the grounds that China allowed military occupations within its territory, implying a form of consent. However, the situation was unique, and it highlighted the challenges in applying international law to the occupation of neutral territories. The legal and ethical implications of occupying neutral territory without consent are profound, and such actions can be deemed acts of war, thereby escalating conflicts and violating principles of neutrality. You guys see when we run into situations when it says the legal and ethical implications of occupying neutral territory without consent are profound, why do you think they need people to vote? Because they can't get caught without anybody consenting, because then the legal implications are profound. Like, they may have to get out if people realize that what the situation is, then and they don't want them here, because what's happening is we've agreed to live on a place that we're calling like a territory that's military. And as long as we agree to that and be occupied by a foreign occupancy, this occupancy is foreign to private people. They are a corporate entity. So they have come here and like laid a corporate claim, and they're operating that way. So that's why I'm saying, guys, like I'm not condemning anybody for anything. I'm telling you guys that when I found this out, I'm like, well, that isn't me. So I really need to get back with my creator, because this has taken me away from where I really come from. And like, I've gotten involved in a whole bunch of stuff. Like, oh my gosh, I'm a freaking gang member. Like, I've been throwing signs and I don't even know it. Like, colors. Anyway, no, just kidding. International law generally seeks to protect neutral territories from being drawn into conflicts, emphasizing the need for belligerents to respect sovereignty and neutrality of other states. The occupation of neutral territories raises questions about the balance between military necessity and the rights of sovereign states, necessitating careful consideration and the adherence to international legal standards. The occupancy or occupation of neutral territory is, well, it significantly impacts the lives of private people like me and you residing in those areas. The sudden imposition of military rule can disrupt daily life. Like when someone says, no, you're locked down, you can't go out, or you can't visit people. It can create uncertainty, right? I mean, it's fear. And it can pose various threats to personal safety and property. If you can't get up and do stuff, if you can't go places and do things, if you can't help people that need help, then it poses threats. Civilians may face increased risks of violence, displacement, and loss of livelihood due to the military presence. And many of you are doing it and don't even know it. So many of you have become accustomed to the presence, and it doesn't affect you anymore because you're just like, that's normal now. But it's not. The imposition of military control can lead to economic instability. Affecting local businesses and access to essential goods and services. You guys see what happens? That kind of thing, and then people are like, well, suddenly we don't have anything. We can't get anywhere, and nobody's open. We're all closed, and these businesses, I'll tell you guys what, I worked for Restaurant Depot for a year. I want to say about a year. And I was in the produce department. I was stocking shelves in produce and such. And I saw from the beginning of that the viral thing that was, a puncture of the skin epidermis. That particular thing, I watched these private businesses all throughout the city of Denver just go under. I mean, and I'll tell you something else. Like, I walked in. I know I wasn't supposed to see this. I wasn't supposed to see these. But one of the managers at one of the stores had called the other businesses that were they were trying to create sales. So these people would come and create memberships and come in and buy stuff. And the notes that were written in the margins on that stuff was just crazy. It was just like, they haven't had certain things they've needed for 2 months, and they just can't, like, this 30-year business is now going out of business. And it's all because people didn't understand the occupancy that was going on, and that they had rights, and they would have stayed in business if they hadn't been a business. Okay, I know that sounds crazy, but it makes sense if you realize that the only reason that they had to stop doing what they did or doing anything was because they were under controls of the occupation that also governed the accounting system. And that's where we don't realize that there's a lot of strings that other people have control over. We don't have that control over those things. So until we fix those things, they're going to be issues, okay? So moving on to, in contrast to unilateral occupation, the occupation of neutral territory by agreement involves mutual consent and predefined terms. And that could be something called a constitution. Simple as that. The form of occupation is characterized by cooperation between the occupying force and the neutral state, ensuring that both parties' rights are rights and interests are respected. And an example of that would be during World War II, there were several agreements allowed Allied forces to station troops in neutral or friendly territories to prevent enemy occupation and ensure strategic advantages. The occupation of Iceland and Greenland by Allied forces was conducted with the consent of their governments to prevent German occupation too. So just a piece of history. And such occupations are governed by the terms of the agreement. They make sure that sovereignty is respected and legal rights of the neutral state are honored. And these agreements outline the extent of control, the responsibilities of the occupying forces, and how long the occupation is going to happen. So those are things that have to happen. I'm giving you guys just a basic framework so you can see how the structure, what the map looks like. But this is not a full comprehensive explanation of this at all, okay? So this is just the surface. I'm scratching the surface so you guys can have a little bit of knowledge without having to go read and research hours and hours of stuff. These agreements emphasize cooperation and mutual benefit, distinguishing them from coercive occupations. You understand? If the coercive occupations exist, you can't be a part of it unless you're consenting, and consenting means not speaking up. So that's where everything exists, because we have a record, because we sat around too much of this. By entering into agreement, states can ensure that their sovereignty is respected while addressing the mutual concerns, okay? And it prevents unilateral and potentially destabilizing actions. So instead of having to go to an extreme, then, you know, when enough people speak up on stuff, they have to fix stuff. That's just the bottom line. But if people don't know what to speak out on, and that's kind of what's happened, a lot of people don't know. Like, I'm living my life thinking this is normal for me. You know, it's normal. This is just the way things go. Isn't that the way mom and dad said? It's just the way things are. No, it's just the way things are. No, like I don't know. I have made a lot of mistakes, and I admit I am like a sinner, okay? I have sinned so many times, it's not funny. But all I can do is look back on the things that I've done and say, you know what? I really am sorry for doing those things, and every decision I make forward has a conscious thought about those mistakes that I made in the past. And like, that's the only way I live my life. I don't live my life going, well, you know, I mean, I made a mistake a long time ago, and I still have this case that says that I'm a bad guy. No, that's that's where things are wrong. That's where it's wrong. See, that's where I realized, like, how can I be sorry for what I did? I repented for what I did. I even paid like fake money. I played Monopoly with these people, and I might have done a lot of, well, I'm not, what am I trying to say? I absolutely did some stupid human tricks for these people because I felt compelled. I felt obligated. And I know you guys have too. Like, someone tells you, no, you got to do this. Sometimes it's just like, okay, you know what? I would rather do that than to have like a rash on my butt that, you know, and a pair of pants with a hole so everyone can see the rash. Like, there's just things, cost and benefits that we do, and that's one of them, is that, you know, it's just not worth it. Like, it's easier to pay a $100 ticket, and they know this. They know this. They have set these price points to a certain thing where, like, okay, it's easier to pay a $100 ticket than it is to try to go and figure out what's it going to take you to figure this out. And how about getting an attorney? A really rich person could get an attorney, and then what? They just don't worry about it, and they just say, take the accounting. But what really is that? That's not, that we're missing the whole point. See, that's where we're letting someone handle the estate. So when neutral territory is occupied by agreement, the legal framework provides clearer protections and assurances for private civilians. And these predefined terms of the agreement help to mitigate negative impacts of occupation. So those are, there's several factors in here, but three of them are the stability economic continuity, and legal protections. So the presence of an agreed framework helps maintain stability and order, and it reduces the likelihood of arbitrary actions by those occupying forces. And with cooperation between the occupying forces and local authorities, economic activities can continue with minimal disruption. And then legal protections, civilians have recourse to legal protections outlined in the agreement, ensuring that the rights are respected and upheld. Armistice agreements, and that's they temporarily halt hostilities, and they often include provisions for military occupation. And these agreements serve as interim measures to stabilize regions and ensure compliance within the terms of the ceasefire while negotiations for a more permanent resolution are underway. People might still be going, well, how in the hell does that, how does this apply to us here in the United States? Well, okay, so the United States is a military occupied territory. The United States of America is a land where people live, and they are two different things. So the military occupation has come in here, but they couldn't come and take over everything. They had to give an option for the people that were not military or not enemies of the state to opt out and become private. And that option has always remained there, but they don't get the same benefits when they don't have the people as members. So they're trying to keep as many memberships as they can. There's some interesting data, guys and gals, that I've just recently heard about and talked more about with somebody. But one of the things that is interesting is that the population increases that have happened over 100 years, you guys would be amazed. Some of them are like 30,000 times or 30,000% increase in occupation of land. And I'll tell you that the real occupations are different, because what we've got is we've got records of people coming into the United States, and we've got other records that say population existences in the United States. And so these population existences are really low, and the people coming into the United States are really high, which shows and proves to what I've said before, is that we are all from just different places. We were all just displaced and brought here. And we were displaced from other places that had displacements, or maybe this was a displaced place and they needed people to reoccupy these territories, and then they just built new populations again, which is something that, you know, I'm very convinced is going to happen here in the near future, which is why we see all of these things happening, like all this crazy stuff you see in, like, there was just a program that happened the other day. They are getting, the schools are in Texas. The schools, I think it's Harris, Texas, Harris County. The schools are shutting down. They're shutting down. They're just shutting down. Okay. These people are getting ready to not do anything anymore. Okay. So, and it's just, that's what happens when it gets to this point where, you know, we've lost control of stuff. They want people to either implode and go to a war, civil war. And we don't want that at all. Like, no one, we all want peace. Everyone wants peace. But the chaos is what's necessary in order to create new beginnings. And so it's almost it's an artificial chaos, but it makes people uproot and change. So it's like a big bubble exploding over you. Like, you have stability, everything you love, a big bubble over you, everything's great, and then poof, it pops, and then you have to figure out a new way to survive and live. And that's kind of been in the plan, guys. I'm not a guy who predicts stuff, but I'm going to tell you that next year, this time, things are going to be way different, way different, not because I said so, but because of the plans that these people have had for a long time that people have not followed. They have agendas that, you know, exceed, like, they put little things out there, you know, they put little, like, Agenda 2021. Those are just kind of distractions. These guys have so many layers of stuff, and it's like they already know. They know exactly what the cycles are. So when you have all the information, you don't have to question like when things are going to happen. But I'll tell you, it's not like the reason that this stuff is crazily happening now is because they've lost control. Like they can't do this anymore. They just their control. It's like when someone does something bad for long enough, after a while, it just you can't do it anymore. You can't do it anymore. It's at that point now. It's just people have acquiesced so long that there's just no more left in this cycle, and they've run out of time. But here's the thing, guys. Like you think about all of the changes that have happened over time. Your lifetime, your planning of your existence here was planned long before you got here, and it has nothing to do with like, well, how did they know I was going to be this? They don't care what you were going to be. They had a plan to keep you into a category, into a classification, so that you would stay there. And that began with your parents. And if they, from the beginning, brought people here from other places, put you here through like Ellis Island, okay? Remember that people that had money didn't go through Ellis Island because they had estates of their own. So you had to go through and get a loaner, okay? And they gave you one. And then they gave everybody after that one. And then when they, people are born now, they don't even know the history that exists because I'm going back before my dad was even born. I'm giving you history before my own dad was even born. So like, my dad is 80 something years old. So like this stuff goes way back, guys. So I'd have to go back to my grandpa's generation. My grandpa is deceased. He died of black lung. So, it goes way deeper, and it's because we don't know this stuff. All right. So, Armistice agreements serve as a bridge between a conflict and peace treaties, and they maintain control over strategic areas while negotiations for a more permanent resolution are working their way out. The continuation of control ensures that order is maintained and that both parties adhere to the terms agreed upon, and they prevent further escalation of these hostilities. And the application of the Hague regulations during the Armistice occupations ensures that the rights of civilians are protected and that the occupying forces act within the bounds of international law. And this adherence to the legal principles helps maintain legitimacy and trust, and it paves the way for more peaceful and stable solutions. So I'm not going to go too much further into this because I don't want to. I've got things I've got to get done also. But I did want to just bring this first part into this and talk a little bit about this. And I managed to get a lot of my own words in, but I want you guys to like research some of the things. Go look down into the keywords in here in this video when it's done. And if you guys have like questions, I want you to follow up with that because this is gonna expand a little more and tell you guys kind of what happened so that people can understand. But it needs to be done from the beginning to the end. And now that I have a plan, so we'll work on these. If you guys have anything you want to talk about, then feel free to leave a comment. Make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. And I appreciate you very much. And, well, I'm going to yield for now. So you guys have an amazing day, and I'm out of here.